If you're hearing this, then the quarantine failed, or someone ignored it. My name is Lieutenant Mara Kade, Recovery Team 2, UNSA vessel Ardent Resolve, and this recording was pulled from my suit's internal buffer after the mission clock stopped transmitting. They told us Bastion Prime had gone dark 3 years ago after a catastrophic reactor event. They told us seismic instability likely destroyed the colony. They told us the last transmission was garbled, fragmented, probably the result of structural collapse. They did not tell us about the word quarantine. They did not tell us that the final line in the recovered burst said, in a voice that sounded very much like it understood what it was condemning, "Do not send anyone else." We came anyway, 40 of us, engineers, biohazard specialists, a reinforced security detachment, 2 xenoarchaeologists, and me combat medic, mission recorder, the one tasked with narrating findings for Earthside review. I'm narrating now because the black box survived longer than we did. I'm narrating because I want whoever finds this to understand that we were not careless. We were prepared, and it did not matter. The first thing you notice about Mars isn't the color, it's the silence. They said that in the old logs, and they were right. It's a silence that feels inhabited. Our lander touched down 2 kilometers west of Bastion Prime at 6:10 mission time. The basin looked wrong even from orbit fracture lines radiating outward like scars in the crust. As we approached on foot, the station came into view through a haze of red dust. Bastion Prime was still standing, but only barely. One habitation ring had collapsed entirely. Another sagged inward as if chewed. The reactor housing remained intact, a dull metallic monolith against the ruin. There were no lights, no movement, no distress beacon, just a broken city under an empty sky. Commander Iqbal ordered a perimeter sweep before entry. Drones skimmed the surface, feeding us thermal and seismic data. Minimal activity, our sensor tech reported. Subsurface readings are fragmented. Could be residual geological instability. Could be. The main airlock had been partially sealed from the inside. We cut through with plasma torches, the metal flaking away like brittle bone. The smell hit us before we crossed the threshold, not decay in the way we expected, not the sharp tang of rot. It was metallic, organic, wet. I felt my stomach tighten inside my suit. The interior corridors were frozen in time. Personal effects floated in low gravity where pressure differentials had shifted objects from their places. A photograph of 42 smiling faces drifted near the ceiling of the central ring, helmets touching, Earth, a pale dot behind them. Someone had scrawled a single word across the bulkhead beneath it in thick, dark strokes: wheat. The letters had been scratched into the metal, not written. "Record everything," I whispered into my mic. We moved deeper. There were bodies, not many. We expected remains scattered everywhere after structural collapse. Instead, we found only fragments. A helmet fused to the floor by corrosive scoring. A ribcage partially embedded in resinous material that clung to the wall like hardened sap. The resin matched the composition described in the fragmented logs we'd finally decrypted during transit. Organic polymer, unknown origin, growth. Dr. Halden, our xenoarchaeologist, murmured, "This is biological." It lined the seams where metal met rock. It threaded through ventilation shafts. It pulsed faintly under our helmet lights. I saw it move before anyone else admitted they did. Just a ripple along the surface, like muscle under skin. We reached sublevel 2 access and found the hatch warped outward from below, not blown. Forced. Commander Iqbal signaled the security team forward. Slow entry, weapons hot, watch your spacing. The shaft descended 30 meters into darkness. Our lights cut through dust motes that drifted in lazy spirals. The walls were almost entirely overgrown now. The resin had thickened into ribbed arches. reinforcing the structure in ways that were disturbingly architectural. This wasn't random infestation. It was construction. Halfway down, Corporal Jensen froze. "Contact," he whispered. Something moved along the opposite wall, clinging upside down to the resin lattice. Pale, elongated, its head smooth and eyeless, ridge slits flexing as if tasting vibrations in the air. It didn't attack. It watched. Then it retreated upward into a dark recess. "Do not pursue," Iqbal ordered. We reached sub-level 3. The chamber had collapsed in places, just as the old logs described. But beneath the rubble, a vast cavity had been carved. Resin pillars rose from floor to ceiling. At the center of the chamber stood a structure that made my breath hitch. It was not a nest. It was not a simple hive node. It was a vertical assembly of organic material and human remains fused together in layered rings. Limbs protruded at unnatural angles, encased up to the shoulder or thigh in hardened resin. Faces stared outward, mouths open in silent screams, eyes filmed over but intact. Some were skeletal, others were disturbingly preserved, and at the base of the structure, embedded in a translucent sac that glistened under our lights, something moved. "Oh God," someone breathed. The sac ruptured slowly, splitting along a seam. A smaller version of the creatures we'd seen on the wall slid free, slick with viscous fluid. It unfolded, limbs extending with mechanical precision. It did not shriek. It did not lunge. It simply turned its head toward us. Then the chamber came alive. Dozens dropped from the ceiling in perfect synchronization. The first volley from our security team tore two apart midair. Acidic blood sprayed, eating through resin and metal alike. One creature hit Private Sorensen full in the chest, inner jaws punching through his visor before he could scream. I dragged him backward on instinct, but his suit integrity dropped to 0 in seconds. "Fall back," Iqbal shouted. We retreated up the shaft under a rain of gunfire and acid. The creatures did not pursue immediately. They gathered around the central structure instead, clustering protectively. "They're guarding it," Dr. Halden said, voice shaking. "That's reproductive." I didn't understand the full horror of that statement until we breached a secondary chamber branching off sub-level 3. We were trying to flank them, to find another access point. What we found was worse. The chamber walls were lined with vertical alcoves, each containing a human body suspended upright in translucent resin. Some were clearly long dead, others were not. I saw a man's chest rise weakly against the encasement. His eyes moved. He was conscious. Tubular extensions from the resin lattice penetrated his abdomen, his thighs, his neck. The material pulsed rhythmically, exchanging fluid. At the base of each suspended body, smaller sacs bulged outward, semi-formed shapes visible within. Crossbreeding chamber. The words formed in my mind with cold clarity. They weren't just feeding. They were integrating, using human biomass as incubation scaffolding, altering genetic pathways through forced hybridization. Dr. Halden stepped closer to one of the living captives. "We can extract." The resin reacted instantly. Tendrils lashed outward, piercing his suit at the joints. He convulsed as acidic enzymes flooded through compromised seals. The nearest creature dropped between us and the exit. Its head crest flared wider than the others we'd seen, plating darker, thicker. A guardian. Security fire shredded its torso, but not before it drove a barbed tail through Halden's throat. The chamber erupted into chaos. Acid mist filled the air. Resin structures split open along hidden seams as more creatures emerged from within the walls themselves. They hadn't been nesting in the station. They had become the station. We lost 12 in that chamber. I don't know how I made it back to the central corridor. I remember dragging Corporal Jensen as his leg dissolved from the knee down. I remember the sound he made when he realized there was nothing left to save. Commander Iqbal sealed Bulkhead C behind us, cutting off the swarm temporarily. "Retorch it," he said, eyes wild behind his visor. "All of it. We burn every chamber." But even as he said it, the floor vibrated beneath us. Not random tremors, a pulse, slow, deliberate, answered by another, farther off. The hive link was active again. We hadn't shattered it. We'd reawakened it. Surface monitors flickered to life on my wrist display. The basin outside Bastion Prime shifted. Cracks widened. Pale forms began emerging in distant lines across the fractured plain. They were coming back. Not disoriented this time. Not chaotic. Organized. The creatures inside the station stopped attacking long enough to reposition. They herded us toward the reactor core. Toward concentration. "They want biomass centralized," I whispered, "for processing." Iqbal looked at me, and in that moment we both understood. This wasn't territorial defense. This was farming. Bastion Prime had become an incubation facility, and Earth had just delivered fresh stock. 30 of us went in. 9 came out alive. We set incendiary charges along the resin growth, flooding corridors with white-hot plasma. Creatures burned, shrieking in tones that felt almost like rage. But for every one that fell, 2 more emerged from wall cavities and ventilation shafts. I saw one pause mid-charge, head tilting as if listening to something beyond our hearing. Then it changed direction strategically, cutting off our retreat route before we even moved. They anticipated us, not individually, collectively. Jensen detonated his last grenade when he was dragged under by 3 of them. The blast took half the chamber with him. The reactor housing. My suit cracked along the shoulder seam. Warning alarms screamed in my ear. I crawled. I don't remember deciding to run. I just did, through smoke and dissolving metal, through the sound of human voices cutting off one by one. I reached the auxiliary comms alcove and sealed myself inside. The door buckled almost immediately under impact from outside. I initiated a tight beam burst toward Earth, compressing everything: visuals, biometrics, structural scans into a prioritized packet. If you're hearing this, that packet made it. The impact stopped after a while. That was worse. In the silence, I heard something new, a wet, rhythmic sound beyond the door. Not claws, not pounding, construction. I checked the interior camera feed. Resin was seeping through the seams of the alcove, spreading across the floor toward my boots. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. I looked down at my cracked shoulder seal and understood. They didn't need to break in. They just needed me contained, preserved, integrated. The resin touched my boot. It was warm. I can see shapes moving beyond the translucent layer now. Smaller ones. Developing. I don't think they're going to kill me quickly. I think they learned from the first colony that stress degrades tissue viability. They're optimizing, if this recording survives, if Earth receives it, if anyone is still debating whether Mars is worth reclaiming. Listen to me. This planet is not dead. It is patient. It uses our structures. It uses our bodies. It waits for us to build the walls for it. The door just split. I can see one of them clearly now, taller than the rest. Its head crest broader, ridged with darker plating. It's watching me the way a scientist watches a specimen. There's no hatred in it, no anger, just assessment. Behind it, I see the chamber they've built in the corridor. Human forms suspended in resin, some still moving. I'm going to keep speaking as long as I can. Not because I think it will save me, but because someone needs to hear what happens next. The creature is stepping closer. The inner jaws are unfolding slowly, delicately. The resin is climbing my legs. It's not burning. It's bonding. I can feel pressure against my skin through the suit breach. They're not just crossbreeding with us. They're redesigning us. using our nervous systems as scaffolding for something that can survive both beneath the Martian crust and above it, something that can wear a shape if it needs to. If this reaches Earth, do not send a third crew. Do not attempt reclamation. Do not assume orbital sterilization will reach deep enough, because when the first hybrid steps onto a transport ship wearing a human face, you won't recognize it until it's already inside your atmosphere. The creature's head is inches from my visor now. I can see my reflection in the curve of skull. It tilts its head, almost curious, and somewhere beyond the station walls, across the red silence of Mars, I hear thousands of synchronized pulses answering it,